Welcome to Inspirational Journeys, everyone. My name is Ann Harrison, and I want to wish you all a happy new year and much success in 2023. Now, today, the Lord has led me to share something with you that has helped me in my revision and while I'm doing editing projects, whether it be for Celebrate Lit Publishing, who some of the authors I've had on the show in the past, or whether I'm working with authors on their projects before they publish. And what that is what I call a book pattern. Now, editors call this a book map, but me being a writer and an editor, and how much I love to crochet, I call it a book pattern for several reasons. For one, first of all, crochet projects like this little guy here, what I've shown you before, have patterns. And of course, I've actually added some embellishments to that particular pattern, but it had a basic pattern to it. So if crochet projects and other fiber art projects have patterns, why not have a pattern for your book to stitch your plot together? I'm developing a method called the plot stitch method, and part of that is called the book pattern template. Now, I'm going to turn on my screen reader, which you will hear in the background for just a moment as I share my screen, and then I'm going to get my e-reader and we're going to go through what I include on the template. And just as a side note, this template does not have to be set in stone. You can edit, you can revise, you can rewrite the whole thing as you want. I just did this as a basic one. And to be quite honest with you, I even made some changes to my own book patterns as I'm working on Shadow of Truth, which is the middle grade mystery with some supernatural elements that I'm working on, and some of my children's fantasy that I've been working on too over the past year. So without further ado, let me get JAWS going here and share my screen.
Sharing options list box. Use arrow keys to share sound checkbox not checked.
No.
Select sharing sound mode. Optimize for video button. Share screen button.
Share my screen.
You have started screen share.
And come over here.
Screen book pattern template. Word.
There we go. Now I can put this back on speech on demand for a minute. And give me just 1 second while I get my e-reader ready. Okay. Oops, my microphone was pulled away. Sorry about that. Okay, so you're going to see the real me as I'm adjusting here. So here we go. So what goes into the book pattern template? Oh no. Give me just a second. I'm having a little bit of struggle here.
Book pattern template.
Let me get down here. Okay, so your first thing you want to write down in your book pattern template is your chapter number or scene number. This way you can keep track of what chapter or scene you're on. Personally, as a middle grade writer, I have decided not to break my chapters into scenes, but I've noticed in my editing that people do that. So you want to make sure you put, for example, chapter 1 first scene or chapter 1 scene 1, etc. And then after that, if you have a title for your chapter, you want to add that too. Okay. Let me get, okay. Oh, shucks. Hold on. Give me just a minute. Okay. Where are we? This describes the setting of your scene. If you're building a fantasy world, you want to put as many details in this pattern as possible, but you don't have to info dump them into your manuscript. You want as many details written out so that you can write descriptions that won't bore the reader, but yet will give the reader a sense of what the world looks like. Even in a contemporary world, you want to give subtle descriptions of the area and where the characters live. So you want to write down as much detail as possible in this book pattern, but you don't have to share everything in the manuscript. I can't emphasize that enough. So that is, where are we? Okay. When are we? This is your timeline. Okay. And if you're doing a historical fiction, whether it be historical fantasy, historical romance, whatever, you want specific dates. You want like Tuesday, June 1st, 1853, for example. That may not be the right day of the week for that particular date and year, but that's just an example I'm throwing out. But if your fantasy or contemporary world does not take place in a historical setting, you can say Monday at 9 a.m. or Monday morning at 2 p.m. or the Saturday before Labor Day at 8 a.m. Something like that. You can use some sort of generalized timeline, whether it's on a Monday or a Thursday. And if you want to add dates or, times in there, that's fine too. You can be as specific as you want, depending on what your genre is. As long as you have a consistent timeline to avoid confusing the reader, because the point here is to avoid confusing the reader as much as possible in your manuscript. And this gives you a way to keep track of all of that without having to do 3 or 4 different documents. Okay. And the next item on the list, give me just a second. Let me get down here. Who are we with? Who is your main character? And who are your supporting characters? And you don't have to put all the characters in the story in this. This is just who are we with for this chapter or scene. And you can add characters later on in the manuscript or only use the characters that are listed in that particular chapter or scene. I broke it down when I first wrote the template as who are we with? Who is the main character and who are the supporting characters? If you don't want to take it to that specific level, you can just say who are we with and then list the characters, your POV character first, and then your supporting characters. That's what I've started doing in my own book patterns. And now let's go to the next item. What conflict do the characters face? Or you could also ask, what do your characters want? Because your characters need an ultimate goal in the story. And the important thing is, what does your main character want? And do your side characters have different wants from your main character? These are some things you can brainstorm, whether you're outlining your book or whether you've pantsed it and you want to go back and do revisions and break it down so that you know what works and what doesn't. Okay, this is something that you will definitely want to write down and brainstorm in the book pattern. Okay, the next item on the list is, what is the action in the chapter? And I put down in this particular template when I first created it 25 words or less. I may take that out. You can write down any action or any conflict that happens to keep the story moving forward. I've even added one to my own book patterns. What is the pivotal moment? If there are any clues, if you're writing a mystery, any clues that you want to add, any other elements to your story from the chapter, your inciting incident, or what causes your story's paradigm to shift. Those are some things you can add. And this is just the one that I've used. Okay. So, what changes do I need to make? Let's see. What changes and revisions? Hold on, let me reread that. I'm having a little struggle here. What changes take place in the chapter / scene, and what do you learn about the plot and the characters as the chapter / scene progresses? Now, that is something, if you've got gaps in your manuscript, that is something that you can read through your chapter or scene to find out where your gaps are and inconsistencies are. And you can also make note of how your character has grown depending on what chapter or scene you are in your book. Now, in the first chapter, you may not want to pose this question, and I may revamp this template before I put it up on my website as a freebie, but this is just the basic template that I started with. Okay, so the next one is, what do you want to change? Let's see. Wait a minute. Hold on. Okay, let me read it again. What do you want to change in this chapter or scene, do the characters reach their goals? Describe how the change is taking place at the end of the chapter / scene affects your character. Do they grow and change as the story develops, or is there a setback at the end of the scene that keeps your characters from moving forward or makes him / her doubt his or himself or herself? Now, that was something that I actually got that question from, or got the idea for that particular question from the book The Magic Words by Cheryl Klein. And in her book, she has a book map template and a sample book mapped chapter from one of the Harry Potter books. I, for one, just wrote these down as questions as a baseline so that I could develop my own book pattern. But again, you can change this and develop it and make it your own. So that is what, that was just one of the things. And I may change it and develop it for later use or to put up on my website as a freebie. So let's go here and see, how does your point of view character react to the conflict and action in this chapter or scene? What is the character's motivation for moving forward to resolve the conflict? Does he or she face a dilemma? What decision does your character make at the end of the chapter or scene, and how will it affect the rest of the story? That is one of those questions that I asked, that I was inspired to use from the book map that I mentioned above. And you can use these questions. Now, I may keep these. I for one don't necessarily use them when I do my own book patterns, because I come up with my own questions. And one of the ones that I use is, what is the pivotal moment that moves the story forward? Or what are the clues that are found, depending on what type of story I'm writing. So again, make it your own. Make this template your own as I'm sharing the screen. Write the questions that would serve your story, because your story may be different from mine. Okay, now let's go to the last one, number 10. Reflect on what you liked about the chapter or scene and write down any elements that you'd like to rework during the revision process. Why didn't the elements work, and what changes would you like to make them work with your story arc? You may want to consider cutting the chapter or scene from your swatch draft if revising it isn't an option. Okay, so this is where, if you're a pantser and you want to go back and do your revisions, this is where you can find any gaps that need to be filled in, or find out if a chapter or scene doesn't work, and find out if it needs to be dumped or cut. But do not, under any circumstances, and I've done this, I've thrown away some things that I probably shouldn't have, but at all possible, don't throw away the scenes, because you can put them as freebies for your email list. You could probably use elements from those scenes if you have to do reiterations of the book. If you have to do like I did in Flip Houses, where you start out writing a Christian psychological thriller or a Christian mystery for adults, and you find out that God wants you to write for children. If you have to flip houses, you may not use the whole scene, but you can read through your scenes to find inspiration and develop the story even further. Use elements and rewrite the missing scenes. But you can also create short pieces from those scenes to use as lead magnets for your email list, or to put on your blog as teasers, or to give readers and other, your fans a behind the scenes look at your progress as you're working on the story. So let's see what is next on my list. Okay. Okay, and I've written some final notes at the bottom of the template. Keep in mind, some of these questions may not fit the current chapter or scene you're revising. If this is the case, feel free to carry the extra questions over to the next chapter or scene. Okay, so that is all that I have on this particular book pattern, and I've written some a couple of paragraphs before that, but I didn't want to share the whole thing with you. But if you want a copy of this particular book pattern template to use as a model for to create your own book pattern, or if you want to use the template and rewrite some of the questions, what you need to do is sign up for my email list by visiting ANNWRITES and at the top of the page of my homepage there is a form that you can fill out to
Full speech.
Oh, sorry, that's a notification to sign up for my newsletter. And your information will come directly to my email. And once it does, then I will put you on my list and I will send you a personalized email with the link to my free downloads page. But you can only get that link if you sign up for the list. So my website again is ANNWRITES inspiration.com. Thanks for watching and listening to this presentation. And I hope you have a very blessed 2023. And let me know if you have any questions or if you have any other suggestions. One quick note I want to say before I end. Let me get back over here.
Controls. Screen sharing meeting
Let
controls.
me stop my
Your screen share
screen.
has been stopped.
Okay, let me stop my screen share. One more thing I want to make you aware of is the fact that I started using this book pattern idea for my developmental editing with Celebrate Lit. And when you use it for developmental editing, or if you're editing your own work, for editing somebody else's work, or even in revisions, if you have any other notes, if you have any editorial notes as you're working through, you can put like a bullet, not a question number, but like as one of the section elements of your book pattern, editorial notes. And then you put down what's consistent, what works and what didn't, and where you need to do the inconsistency, what inconsistencies there are, where you need to note it for the author. I did that, and taking notes like that really helped me write the revision letter for my edits. So you can use it whether you're an editor or you are a writer. So I want to thank you guys for joining me. Happy New Year once again. And remember, your story matters. Have a blessed day and happy writing.